Renato Moicano versus Islam Makhachev was a fairly interesting fight. It went, more or less how I thought it was going to go, except for the fact that it ended prior to 1.5 rounds. Islam certainly got him out of there a lot quicker than I was anticipating. But on the feet in particular, people seem to have a lot of takeaways with this fight. They go, oh my God, Ilia Topuria would knock out Islam. And look, I don't know about that exactly, but I will say Renato Moicano did have a very good approach on the feet, as we discussed very in depth during my Arman versus Islam breakdown. The thing you have to understand about Islam's striking is, defensively, he's very, very good. On the back foot, his head movement is impeccable. He is a very decent counter striker. That is why, to me, you cannot rush at Islam throwing punches. Many have tried that strategy, and many have failed. Charles Oliveira did not land a single meaningful punch trying to do that to Islam. He would just back up, evade, avoid all the strikes, and eventually start finding his counters. Even Alexander Volkanovski, pretty much 90% of that fight, he was hitting nothing but air with his punches. You just cannot chase Islam. You have to hold your ground, you have to keep the strikes long, and you have to try to make him move forward. And that is what Renato Moicano tried to do, and it actually seemed to be working decently. Even then, though, he didn't land anything super significant apart from a jab as Islam was stepping in, and he did make Islam slip, which is something. It's not really much, but it is something, I guess. But other than that, when Renato would step in trying to land, Islam's head movement, as always, looked on point. He was able to slip and stay safe. But there were moments where Islam was forced to have to try to be the one to move forward first, and Renato was close to landing counters. I mean, look, it's not much, but when you're dealing with somebody as skilled as Islam, we'll take what we can get in terms of trying to game plan here. But, of course, Renato Moicano, while he is a very good grappler, he's not Charles Oliveira. He doesn't have a particularly strong guillotine. He's not strong off of his back. Where he specializes in is back takes and rear naked chokes. When it comes to purely that position, I think he's arguably the best in the division. But other than that, you take him down, you put him on his back, he doesn't really have anything. So that's exactly what Islam does. He shoots the double leg, but Moicano actually sprawls very well, and he's able to, as he's coming up, dig an underhook. So Islam switches to a single leg, and I will say the single leg finish here looked a lot better than any of the single legs he was attempting against Dustin Poirier. He's able to get Moicano down. Moicano eventually, though, does get feet on the hips, pushes Islam away to get to turtle. But from there, we see Islam's darce. And I mean, holy shit, is his darce nasty. I mean, he had Moicano panic tapping immediately. And as soon as Islam lets go, you see the discoloration around Moicano's neck. It looked exactly the same as Valentina Shevchenko's chin after Alexa Grasso had a fully locked in neck crank for like 25 seconds. I mean, Islam only had this grip for 10 seconds? I mean, the squeeze is absolutely absurd. Though I will say, and I've just got to be completely honest here, you might be able to chalk this up to the fact that Moicano, of course, while he did go through an entire training camp prior to this fight where he was in very good shape, he may have not been able to stylistically prepare for Islam well enough. Because I just got to be honest here, man. You get to this position against Islam. Islam fishes his arm all the way through across your neck. There is nothing else he could be physically going for here other than a darce. If you're Moicano, you have to go 2-on-1 with Islam's right hand and just hold it for dear fucking life. He didn't really seem to try to even grab one of Islam's arms. I mean, he had about 2 seconds here. And that's just too much time. I'm sorry. You kind of let Islam lock it up. And from this position, again, the squeeze is ridiculous. You cannot let Islam get to this position. And, of course, he finishes the choke. But the very interesting thing is, post this fight, Islam has been very vocal about what he wants next. He says, for one, he is very willing to go up and fight Shavkat Rakhmonov for the title. He won't face Belal Muhammad, but Shavkat he would love to go up and fight against. If that's not available, He says he can beat Dricus du Plessis. I mean, he genuinely seems to believe that. And I don't know. Do I believe that? Well, we can get into it, right? But I think there are some interesting potential fights for Islam as we stand right now. You know, of course, Arman Tsarukyan is not going to get an immediate title shot. He needs another fight, right? Islam, he didn't take any damage of this fight at all. He's very fresh. We could see a potential turnaround for him quick. I think in terms of the lightweight division, there's really nobody else other than Charles Oliveira. And I think that probably will be next. I will drop a 45-minute in-depth analysis and breakdown for Oliveira if that does come to light. But other than that, I think there are only 3 interesting names, all right? I think, of course, you got Ilia Topuria starting off. Funny enough, while watching the fights live, I recall a lot of people, after just seeing Moicano do okay on the feet, immediately I saw people going, oh, Ilia knocks out Islam. Ilia knocks him out, no question. And I think that is interesting. Of course, I'm just going to say this right now. If you were to tell me that Ilia and Islam are going to fight, and there are going to be moments in the fight where both of them are in the pocket swinging at each other, akin to something like this, I would tell you Ilya's going to knock him out. I mean, I'm just going to be honest. I don't think anybody in the UFC has ever been as dangerous as Ilia from this position. The amount of torque in his punches, the accuracy, it's absurd. Like, having a chin is completely irrelevant against Ilia Topuria. It just is. When you got Ilia Topuria uncorking an overhand that clips you right on the chin, it just doesn't matter whether or not you're perceived to have a strong chin or not, all right? It goes out the window. No one's going to survive a punch that clean, that accurate, with that amount of torque, okay? But here's the thing, and I've just got to be honest with you, I don't think Ilia matches up with Islam particularly well. And I think it comes down to the fact that, again, right, Ilia Topuria essentially is always swinging for the bleachers. He is not trying to win a decision against you typically. He's trying to knock you out at all times. Again, though, he's fighting a guy in Islam who I think the best aspect of his game is his defense on the back foot, his head movement, his ability to stay safe on the feet. There were a lot of moments against Max Holloway where Ilia is stepping in, trying to land these giant hooks, these giant overhands. Max is just out of range. He's making Ilia miss, and then off of those misses, he's stepping in and he's landing counters. I think, of course, Islam is extremely well-rounded, but particularly where he's underrated is the pure boxing and his counter-punching. I think Ilia will have trouble trying to work his way on the inside. I think Islam is going to stay so unbelievably cautious on the feet. He's not going to take any risks. He's always going to be backing up, and he's going to be looking to find his opportunities to touch Ilia off of his misses. I mean, again, as I mentioned earlier, Volkanovski was really going after Islam, trying to land big shots. He just had very, very little success. Of course, though, over a 5-round fight, Ilia is so dangerous. He just needs to connect once with you cleanly before he really hurts you. The thing is, though, right, you look at the Max Holloway fight as a great example of this. Again, Max had really good moments on the back foot evading. He also had his moments of landing straight shots on Ilia, and then Ilia, in return, was unable to reach him with his own counters just because of the height disadvantage. But Max Holloway just didn't have a lot of places he could take this fight to stay safe. And that is why, regardless of the success he did have striking with Ilia, it doesn't really matter when you look at this finishing sequence. It's just like, oh, fuck, that's rough. I mean, that's rough. He gets cracked and then flatlined by just these ridiculously accurate, powerful punches. But with Islam, I think he can replicate a lot of the success Holloway had, evading and countering, whereas also having more areas to take the fight where he's safe and areas that he can take advantage of Ilia's defense. As we've discussed with Ilia in the past, he does such a good job shutting guys' kicking game down because he's able to create this shell around him with his guard. His arms are long enough to protect his head and his body all at once. I mean, Volkanovski was unable to land any kicks clean. Every single one hit Ilia in the arms, but kicks right down the middle, teeps in particular, seem to connect so much better. I mean, Max Holloway threw a number in their fight, and each one landed fairly cleanly. He even tried the teep to the face at one point, and I mean, Ilia was able to back up, but you see it's there. The straight kicks right down the middle is what Islam needs. And again, Islam has never been super kick heavy in any fight apart from the second Volkanovski fight, because they game plan very particularly for him. Volk just doesn't deal with kicks well at all. But I think in this instance, it's an amazing tool to use against Ilia at range. And of course, the other big thing for Islam is his ability to completely close the distance and clinch with Ilia when he steps in with punches. Volkanovski did this once to really nice success. If you're fighting a really powerful boxer, you want to be either all the way on the outside or all the way on the inside. You want to avoid boxing range. Islam, coming from a Sambo judo background, is so comfortable in the clinch. I mean, he specializes in this area, but he could even take it a step farther, and he could make Ilia run into takedowns. Just duck right underneath the big shots in order to finish and put Ilia on his back, like Bryce Mitchell was able to do one time. I think, again, you go back to the Max Holloway fight, he did not have any of these different areas to take the fight. In fact, it was the opposite. The takedown threat was coming in his direction. Ilia made it very known that he was looking to grapple Max Holloway. I think, at the end of the day, Islam can replicate a lot of the success that Max had on the back foot, evading and landing counters, while also having these different areas where he should have an advantage in. Still though, even with all of this being said, what makes this matchup so interesting is just the fact that Ilia only needs to land once. He only needs one opportunity to really put his body weight into a clean shot. And I mean, I don't care who you are, at 145, 155, you're fucked. Maybe a welterweight could eat it. Maybe, a 185er probably would be okay, but I don't trust any 155er eating a fully untorqued overhand from Ilia Topuria, and the danger will always be there. I just think theoretically Islam should be able to craft a pretty solid game plan of how to stay safe in every single area, and it just comes down to whether or not he can execute it perfectly. One mistake could lead to the fight being over, but I do see a very clear path to victory for Islam here. Next, of course, we have Shavkat Rakhmonov. And look, at the end of the day, it is difficult to be certain about how Islam would look moving up in weight. I do think on paper, as we stand right now, it probably wouldn't be a good idea. And I think the reason for that is Islam has been very open about the fact that he doesn't get up past 182 outside of camp. I mean, look, those are his words. And as we stand right now, that is pretty normal for the lightweight division. I actually think there are probably more fighters that walk around even heavier than that at 155. I mean, fucking Paddy Pimblett gets up to about 200 pounds outside of camp and cuts down. He's massive for the weight class. But 182 for welterweight. I mean, look, I think Ian Gary walks around about that weight, but the difference is it's his frame is so much longer at 6'3". He can get away with it more so. Whereas you're dealing with a 6'1", 77-inch reach Shavkat Rakhmonov. He's going to be way bigger than Islam. And I think, I just don't think it's a great idea for him, I have to be honest. I think let's take Geoff Neal as a good example. Geoff Neal is honestly on the slightly shorter side of welterweight at 5'11", an inch taller than Islam. On fight night, he weighs 200 pounds. All right. He is a very good pure boxer, decent amount of power in his hands. And I mean, Shavkat fought very recklessly against him. Shavkat just went after him face first, trying to fight him in the pocket, which was absolutely absurd. Shavkat ate a tremendous amount of bombs before eventually hurting Geoff and putting him away. Islam would never be able to hurt Shavkat like this. I mean, if the Dustin Poirier fight is anything to go based on, he just doesn't have this same kind of power, even if he was landing just as clean. And that is if Shavkat chooses to fight this recklessly. Because the crazy thing is, he completely switched it up against Ian Gary. Against Ian Gary, he was the way cleaner boxer. He was timing really good jabs, really good right hands. He was timing his shots off of Ian Gary's misses. I mean, he showed to be very technical there. Now, of course, a lot of people are not very bullish on Shavkat as of right now because most of the general public thought he was supposed to run through Ian Gary. Now, of course, my little community here, we were not surprised about that. We knew well before that fight that Shavkat was going to really struggle taking Ian Gary down with the clinch. So, I mean, that just wasn't the case for us. I think we were only surprised about how well Shavkat did on the feet. So, look, it's just the notion that Islam Makhachev, who, to me, the best aspect of his game is his defense, his ability to evade, his head movement, his counter ability. He now is going to have to be closing the distance against a significantly taller, a significantly bigger, extremely skilled opponent. I really don't know how to feel about this one. I gotta be honest. I mean, I don't think Shavkat would be able to take down Islam. I think, again, trying to hit these clinch takedowns and build your leverage against him would be easier than somebody like Ian Gary because Ian is so tall and so long. But again, right, Islam specializes in positions like these. I don't think that's going to be easy to do. But at the same time, I struggle seeing how Islam would find a lot of success unless he kind of spent time trying to really acclimate to fighting at 170. I mean, look, man, there is a reason why Khabib chose to murder himself every single weight cut to keep getting down to 155. I mean, there's a very clear reason for that. He dealt through kidney function. He dealt through not even making weight against Justin Gaethje and getting a pass from the commission to continue to fight at this weight class because the welterweight division I don't think would have been good for him either. But I mean, look, can you even blame him? Who would you rather fight? Conor McGregor or Kamaru Usman, right? I mean, there's a big difference there in the level of opponent. And I just think, look, at a certain time, right, yeah, Robbie Lawler was the welterweight champion. I think Islam Makhachev smokes Robbie Lawler at 170. But, oh my God, somebody like Shavkat Rakhmonov, that 15-pound weight jump is just really substantial. And I think skill for skill, Islam is good enough. But again, a 6'1", 77-inch reach Shavkat Rakhmonov who outboxed Ian Gary, I don't know, man. I just think if Islam wants any kind of a chance here, he needs to take some time off to really build up to this weight class. Kinda like what Max did for Gaethje, but even then, Max has the frame of somebody who can fight at 155 no problem. I think no matter what, Islam is always going to be a little short. I don't think his reach is comparable to most 170ers as of now. Now, with all this being said, is there even a point to me bringing up Dricus du Plessis? I mean, look, Islam is saying he can do it. I think that's horse shit. All right, I got to be honest. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? What are you talking about? Dricus du Plessis walks around at 222 pounds. Islam claims to not even weigh 185. I mean, this is just ridiculous. I am fairly certain that this is more so a marketing stunt than what Islam actually believes. Now, I'm sure at least one person in the world is going, hold on a second. Do you remember those videos of Khabib grapple fucking the 185-pound champion Luke Rockhold? Look, I think there might be a possibility here. I would tell you hogwash. That's what I would tell you. I would say bah humbug to such a notion, because let me tell you something. There is a reason that every single clip you will ever find about Khabib going against Luke Rockhold never starts with them in a neutral position. You never see them slap hands and both start standing. The video always starts with Khabib fully locked in on side control, bear hugging him as hard as he can, or he already has him down up against the fence. Now, of course, regardless of a weight advantage, it is going to be difficult to get out of positions like this, but it is just a weird coincidence that you've never actually seen the video start prior to that. You know what I mean? And just Dricus in particular is such a fucking specimen. He's so goddamn girthy and big and pulsating and sweaty, and it's just like the notion that a 155er can go up and do anything to him is just insane. I mean, I guarantee you if Dricus fully uncorked a head kick and Islam just stood there blocking like this, it would still rock him. I mean, we just saw how having a massive strength advantage aids you in grappling exchanges between Umar and Merab, and this is the same weight class. There is no conceivable way Islam could do anything to Dricus. I mean, there's just no way. Dricus can just bum rush him constantly, and even if Islam landed so cleanly off the counter, Dricus is just going to walk through it, man. Like, this is not an interesting fight. I think Islam with perfect defense from this position is still getting suplexed over and over and over again. Yeah, it would be so unbelievably hard for Islam to shoot, get in on a takedown, and then be able to finish it. The amount of time Dricus would have to be able to defend it would be absurd. I mean, it's just, I don't think this is comparable. I think it's a laughable notion that Islam would ever have any chance against anybody to the level of Dricus du Plessis 2 weight classes up. I mean, that's why